In this video, we'll talk about the use and application of Venture's contract agreements. I've created a comprehensive document that serves as a guide for our sales and operational team, as well as our agreements manager, in processing agreements and managing agreements. This document is actually stored out on the M drive under the folder Venture Agreements. You see the first PDF in the list, Venture Agreements, Use and Application. Let's scroll through the document as we take a closer look at our agreements process. Essentially, our agreements map to our practice areas of Premise Solutions and VT Cloud Services. We also have a few miscellaneous other agreements. Let's take a look first at our VT Cloud Services. On the screen now is a schedule of those agreements. The first agreement in the list is the VT Cloud Master Services Agreement. This agreement essentially establishes the basic legal framework for our relationship with the customer. Only one Master Services Agreement is ever required for all VT Cloud services. Next in the list is a VT Cloud Addendum for all of our hosting, cloud, and co-location services. Then the price schedule attachment. This is an Excel file that is used by our technical architects and our designers from the data center, etc., in configuring our VT Cloud services. The price schedule attachment is ultimately used to create a quote and quozel. We also have a couple of other documents applying to our uCloud services, a VT Cloud Watch Addendum, and then for our VT Cloud Backup and Recovery services, we have the VT Cloud Provisioning Statement of Work. Those are usually architected services, and we require that to be part of the package that includes the Master Services Agreement, the Addendum, and the price schedule attachment. Next, let's take a look at the schedule of agreements for our Premise Solutions. Again, a Master Services Agreement is required for all of our Premise Solutions where the customer requires a contract. Now, many large customers are fine with issuing a purchase order. Maybe they want us to use their contract, and we can accommodate that as well. We're flexible in that respect. But if it's a complex project that involves a statement of work and a fair amount of engineering services, generally we want to include these agreement, the Master Services Agreement. Obviously, that's accompanied by a quote and proposal for the products and services, and then a statement of work that is produced by the project manager and our technical architect and our implementation engineers. All of that forms the package of contract agreements for a Premise Solution situation. Now, once again, the Master Services Agreement, only one of those is ever required, so all future projects simply require a quote and proposal and a statement of work, and all of that is incorporated into the original Master Services Agreement we would have on file. So now you see a schedule of the many miscellaneous agreements. We call them other agreements that we use in our business. Credit application, non-disclosure agreement. If we have a situation where we utilize a subcontractor, maybe a teaming agreement with another partner, customer product evaluation, and maybe even a reseller agreement for our VT Cloud services in those special situations. All of these agreements are actually stored, again, out on the M drive in the folder entitled Venture Agreements and PSA. Now, all of these are actually password protected Word files. So in the situations where a customer wants to mark up these agreements and we send those to them, actually our agreements manager will do that. We'll talk about that in a minute. They can open the document as read-only when they're prompted for a password instead of entering the password, and then they can make their changes and save it under a different name, and generally speaking, the customer contact and me will work through those changes in the contract until we get it right. So let's explore the workflow for our VT Cloud Services Agreements. So what you see on the screen now is a step-by-step PlayScript workflow starting with step 1. And that just shows who's responsible for completing the various activities and tasks to process agreements, what the opportunity status should be as that task is being completed, and then some remarks over here. So what you see is that really simply changing the status on an opportunity will cause ConnectWise to automatically create an activity for our agreements manager, and that activity will actually be stored on the opportunity. The agreements manager, upon receiving the notification that there is the need for contracts through the activity, will actually use DocuSign, create a DocuSign envelope. It's an e-sign tool with the appropriate agreements upon analyzing the opportunity to determine what agreements are required. And the agreements manager will set that envelope up for me to execute as well as the customer signer to execute. And we'll talk about DocuSign in a future video. Let's take a look over here in ConnectWise though at what we mean. So this is the new opportunity screen in ConnectWise. This is a brand new opportunity that I have quoted some exchange services, our VT Cloud services, and I'm ready to issue a contract to the customer because the customer's agreed to purchase the services. So I'll simply go over here and change excuse me, that's the type. We want the status, which is currently open, to agreements needed. And I'll save the opportunity at that point. And so an activity will be generated automatically by ConnectWise simply by changing the status to agreements needed. A workflow notification will work in the background to do that. Our agreements manager will receive that notification and start the envelope in DocuSign. And what you see on the screen in this area is just what an activity looks like. This one has actually been completed. And it is stored out on the Activities tab on an opportunity, as you can see right here. And it's got a detailed log of all the various activities that occurred on the activity itself. Now keep in mind that as the status is changed on the opportunity, agreements needed, agreements in process, agreements complete, email notifications will be sent to our sales team, the account manager and inside sales, notifying them as the opportunity and its associated agreements move through the process. Now again, if the customer receives the standard agreements via DocuSign and elects to have some changes made or wants to have some changes made to mark those up, our agreements manager will notify me, will assign me as a resource to the activity, and I will work directly with the customer in making those changes until we get those contracts in their final form, and then I will attach them to the ticket associated, the services ticket associated with the opportunity. That will notify the agreements manager, who will set a new envelope up with the revised agreements, the modified agreements, and those will be executed by the customer and me via DocuSign. And here you see the remaining tasks in the workflow for our VT Cloud Services agreements on these next couple of pages. And then finally, when the agreements are fully executed, they are attached to the ConnectWise opportunity. The agreements manager will actually do that, and you see an example of that here where we've got the master services agreement, the quote, letter of authorization, and of course the addendum, all attached under the Documents tab of the opportunity. And those documents will actually transfer down to the sales order when this opportunity is won and changed to a sales order and transferred to a sales order. And at that point, they are stored on the Documents tab of the company record. Now the workflow for other agreements, just miscellaneous agreements such as a non-disclosure agreement, is a little bit different, and here's the workflow for that. I'll let you read that in the document, but the main thing to note is that the process here is to simply go into ConnectWise and under your My Activities screen over here and just create a brand new activity. Okay, this is what the activity screen looks like, waiting for entry. And here I've got an explanation of what data to actually enter into the activity, but it's a new activity with a type of agreements. You would assign it to Jeannie Hirschfield. You'd enter a reasonable date here, and you'd simply check here to have the system notify you. You would be the assigner in sales or inside sales to receive an email when the activity is complete. Of course, select the customer and so forth. So at that point, the agreements manager, Jeannie, will be notified that there is a new activity to send an agreement. You would indicate specifically what agreement you need to send up here in the subject, like send a non-disclosure agreement, and she would do that in DocuSign. So in addition to the PlayScript workflow that we've just seen, I've also created a very detailed workflow here on the screen, a swim lane diagram, a cross-functional workflow using Visio. Note that you can actually click inside the document to get a full-size view of the document, and I'll show you what that looks like here. It's a little bit easier to see on your screen. So it just gives you a nice visual depiction of the workflow for processing agreements. Now I've created these cross-functional workflows for several of the other processes that we use here internally, and you'll see these in some future videos and future documents. Now finally in the document we've got some examples of using agreements for our VT Cloud services, several scenarios, also our premise services, our miscellaneous agreements, and in the final section of the document we've got a frequently asked questions section. Information there I think will be of use and value to you. And then the final insertion here is actually a link to this video in the document. So hopefully this will make it easier for you to administer agreements at Venture.